Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Warrior Woman podcast. Listen, I am so excited to be here today. Like, this is becoming like really exciting to do. I am new to the podcast world. And so just to be able to sort of launch this thing has just been an amazing blessing. So you typically have seen me at this time doing Warrior Wisdom Wednesday. And now we've transitioned that to the Warrior Woman podcast because it's not just me who is going through their own healing journey and can talk about it. And so this is why I always want to bring on other women to be able to share what their soul care journey has absolutely been like. And so on today, it's my sister from another mister, y'all. Listen, her smile will change your life. It does for me. Every time I see it, I'm just like, and it's so, you'll see it when she get on, but it's bright and vibrant. And it's just like one of my favorite parts of her. And so I'm excited to sort of break bread and have this conversation today around soul care because she has a journey and a story, honey. Let me tell you. And so, well, actually, she gonna tell you, right? And so before I bring her on, let me just tell you a little bit about her and her journey, right? So in 2007, a fatal car wreck left Lindsey Vertner brain dead and paralyzed, y'all. Okay, that's a whole testimony in and of itself. Medical experts were amazed at Lindsey's miraculous recovery. She uses her unparalleled perspectives to push her clients towards success in their personal and professional lives. Lindsey's expertise teaches high achieving leaders how to master their mindset and increase their clarity, confidence, and connections. As an award-winning mindset expert, come on, sis, transformational speaker, and multi-time, not one time, not a few times, but multi-time Amazon #1 best-selling author, Lindsey's mission is to teach women around the world how to create their first-class life, full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. Her unique methodology empowers women to fully maximize their potential by walking in their God-given purpose while increasing their self-care, self-worth, and self-discipline, the 3 pillars of self. With a master's in professional counseling, Lindsey is a graduate of both Indiana and Liberty Universities. So you can connect with her at www.firstliveafirstclasslife.com. This is what happens when you're so excited, right? You just like ready. And so you just going through it, but I promise you, we're going to get you all the correct information. So welcome. Hey, sis.
Hello.
How are you? See, there go that smile. Just like,
listen, I was backstage like, oh, no pressure.
I was like, that was one of the first things that like you can hear it. So I first encountered you on Clubhouse. And I popped into one of your rooms. This is when it was like iPhone users only or something like that. And I popped in and you were just giving the business on self-care. And I was like, who is this? Let me go follow her. Then the link popped up. I was like, bet, click, follow, click, follow. Yep, connect. And then I got to actually see you outside of Clubhouse, like on social media. And I was like, bet, come on, sis, with a smile. And so, yes. And then we had the opportunity to actually meet in person. And, you know, it has just been blessings and blessings and blessings. And I'm just so grateful for the connection. And I'm so grateful for your yes. Because listen, she does the podcast thing, y'all. She does that. Okay. I'm stepping into her territory. In fact, and I told her that. I said, I had to bite your stuff. I said, because the way you just laid it out for me to come on your podcast, I said, don't be mad. Don't be mad. Please don't send me a cease and desist, sis, because I promise you, it's out of love. You know what I'm saying? So, yes, welcome to the podcast. You know, I like to have a good time and joke and, you know, lighten it up a little bit.
Listen, but you know I'm for the good times.
You see, it's always like, you know, we're ready to get started. So, ma'am, Man. Why don't you? I told them I read the old, the whole professional stuff. Why don't you tell us what a first class life looks like, what it means to you, and why you started this movement? Because it's not just a brand, it's not just a business, it's a whole movement.
Mm-hmm.
You are taking not just women on, but professional leaders as well. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes. Well, first, thank you for your yes, because I know that you are serving so many women with your story and your platform and things like that. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as far as a first class life, it is something that I personally experienced. I've studied as far as, what makes people successful and all of those things, but it wasn't until I actually went through an experience on my own that I really understood the things that not only was I learning, but, the things that I was observing and had been observing all of my life and how they played a part in the quality of life that we're living. See, the thing is, like, even if you've never been on a plane, everybody knows the difference between first class and economy, right? And in that case, we have to pay for first class to have those luxuries and those amenities and that special privilege. But in our lives, we have to create a first class. And unfortunately, most of us are settling for economy, not because we're not capable of creating that quality of lifestyle, but because our own mindsets and inner limiting beliefs is holding us back from achieving the things that we truly desire in our lives. And so whenever I went through my journey, which I'm sure we'll get into more, I noticed that people were coming to me a lot and asking, like, how did you overcome this? How did you do this? And I'm like, well, I did this, and this. And I was noticing how it would impact their lives when they would follow those suggestions. And that's whenever the light bulb clicked, like, wait a minute, there was purpose in the pain. And that was the meaning, like truly helping people to create a first class life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness, despite where they grew up, despite how much money they have, despite their background, despite any mistakes or flaws that they may have overcome or have inside, despite all of the obstacles that they can endure in life, because you don't get much farther than the one I've been through. Despite it all, you have to make the conscious and intentional choice to create a life that you love.
Listen, I love all of that. Okay. Just one big heart. I love all of that because they're off the rip. There were just a few different things that I'm like, I hope people caught what she was saying. So there was I experienced a setback, right? I experienced this sort of traumatic event. And I had to actually work my way through it, right? I didn't just rush my way through it. I didn't go around it. I didn't avoid it. I didn't make excuses because of it. What I did was I actually had to embrace it and I had to accept it. And then I had to acknowledge that I actually had to go through a journey to get to where I am. And that did require you to set your mind. I love sort of the wordplay when we get to sort of cliche terms. And I say that because mindset has become sort of all the buzz, right? It's been a buzzword since kind of the pandemic, right? It's been one that we can add, like pivot, right? Mm-hmm. It's one of those that we can just add to the bucket of the pandemic, surge of words. But truly, when you really break down mindset, and my husband talks about heart set and how the two are connected, you're really making a conscious decision to set your mind on achieving something. Mm-hmm. Like it's not just this one word and we say it and it's mindset. You're really looking at being able to consciously decide, this is the life that I want to have. This is the way that I need to go to get it. Mm-hmm. And this is, these are the things that I need to do to achieve it. Right. And these are the things that I actually need to tell myself to make it come true. So it's not just, it's not just mindset and we're saying it sort of just, willy-nilly, if you will. It really is like you have to set your mind on, do I want to stay in economy or do I want to work my way to first class? So maybe you're in seat 25F all the way in the back. And the next one, you know what I'm saying, right by the toilet. And then the next one, you are by, you're in the middle. And then you work your way up to priority seating, and you're in maybe rows 1 through 5. You're enough to get to the curtain. So every time they open it, you can
peek in there.
You know what I'm saying? And so, but that requires a different level of investment every single time, because the seat that's in 25, in row 25 may be $89, but the seat that's in, row 15 might be $125, but the seat that's in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that might be 2 and some change. And so that in order to get to, but you build your way up to it. And so when you're setting your mind to operate in this first class life, to push through the traumatic events, you realize that it doesn't matter what is out there that you want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be able to set your sights, set your mind, set your decisions, affirm yourself in the decision that you make, and then set like achievable goals and steps, right? To get from 25 to 15 to row 1 to first class, to get on the other side of the curtain, right?
All of that.
All of it. So that's what I like. I hope y'all got that, because I wanted to make sure that you were picking up what she was putting down, because it was good. It was good. I want to make sure that y'all get to it, right? And so you hinted at some of the experiences that you've had to go through that have reshaped your life and allowed you to actually pull steps from it to help other people in their journey, whether it was as traumatic or less traumatic from what they were experiencing. We know trauma is I say subjective, because it does depend on how it impacts you, and nobody else can decide that. So, based on where they are and what they need, you were able to pull on steps. This is the beauty about getting to the other side of healing, is that not only can you stand on the truth of your story and your journey, but you can pull out the actual steps that you took, so that you can go back and lift another up from the trenches and from the valley and say, there is something on the other side if you do X, Y, and Z. Right. And so I think that is so dope. So one of the questions that I like to start off with, just to get sort of a baseline, since we talk about soul care and this whole platform is predicated on soul care, what does soul care mean to you, and how would you define it?
When I hear soul care, my mind instantly goes to self-care, because that's another buzzword since the panini hit, right? Yes. Self-care, and everything's become so clouded that we want to make sure that we aren't dismissing those words lightly, because they are such a crucial part of our everyday life. And so when I hear soul care, it makes me think of self-care, because I know what self-care really means. It's taking care of your overall health, mental, emotional, and physical health, that impacts your soul and how you show up in the world. And so that's what I think of when I hear soul care. And I would define it as preserving and protecting your health, preserving and protecting your mental, emotional, and physical health, because like I just said, it impacts every single thing that we do, whether we want it to or not. It does. So we have to be intentional about how it is impacting us, whether that's negative or positive, and really making sure that we're active, taking an active role in it showing up in a positive way.
Right. That was good. That was good, sis. I love it, because that's really what it is. And one of the things that I like that you sort of expounded on was when we say, it's taking care of yourself, from a holistic perspective, a whole person perspective, right? It's not just, we say health and we automatically go to like fitness, maybe exercise, maybe diet. But no, your health is all encompassing, not of just your physical, but it's also your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, like all of that manifests. It does. And I've been talking about it because I've been so excited about just learning about how just your emotional energy is stored in your body. So it definitely does impact the physical. Like, it's been proven that you can have a traumatic experience and then store all of the emotions because you've suppressed them or you've repressed them, which is a conscious decision to tuck it. Like, people don't know that there's a difference. There's the suppression, which kind of organically happens because your body is in sort of fight or flight, and your subconscious picks it up and says, that was scary, we're going to put this back here, and we're not going to really process through it because that was hard. Suppression. Repression is when you consciously say, I'm going to tuck this back because I don't want to deal with it. It's an avoidance. It is a posture of trying to protect yourself. And so because you don't really know the process to go through it or to heal it, you tuck it back yourself and say, I'm not going to deal with that. And so those are two different things.
Yeah. And can I say, this is why healing is so important, because whenever we have those things happen, what happens in life is that we think it's stored away in a neat little box and we can go back and address it when we feel like it. But it subconsciously shows up in our thinking, in our behaviors. It impacts how we interact and engage in the world. And usually it happens at the most inconvenient of times that it'll snap and pop out, and you'll be like, dang, why did I do that? Or why did I say that? Or why did this happen? Not realizing that it's tied to those hidden traumas that we haven't healed.
Yeah, they're trauma triggers. And every time somebody step on a little button that's close to that little trauma trigger, here you go, exploding or imploding, and you have no idea what it's attached to. And so, like, I shared the story of my daughter who was going to get her hair braided. And I had been molested while getting my hair braided at someone else's house when I was younger. And she was just about the same age I was when it happened. And the person's house that I was going to have her get her hair braided at had, they had taken in a nephew or a cousin who was on house arrest. And it immediately triggered me. And I wanted to get out of there fast because I've seen it while I was getting my hair done. And I made an appointment for her to go later during the week when they were on vacation. And, her brother was initially going to walk her down, drop her, because it was maybe about a 5-minute walk down the street, drop her, and then come back and get her. And I saw that and I was like, oh, no, nope, 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 no, and no. And I had to recognize that I had to not necessarily come clean, because my husband already knew about what had happened. But I had to tell him, this actually, like, if you take her, I need you to stay.
Yeah.
Because now I'm worried that this can happen. And so because I hadn't processed through the, what if this happens? What if this scenario comes up for her? What would you do? And so I panicked. And so all he did was walk out the room, and she just, shared the story, how she was helping him get back on his feet. And it was right near that trigger. It was right near that trigger. And so, to your point of, this is why you have to actually, really process as much as you can in those moments through, because there are going to be scenarios. There's going to be things people say, people do. Like, you're going to read something on social media and you're going to take it some type of way, and you're going to think somebody's shooting subliminal shots at you on social media, and that have nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you, but it does to do with your trauma.
And the thing is, like, they can show up in so many different ways. Like, it can be a smell that triggers us and we don't recognize the attachment with that smell. It can be a certain view or a certain person's name that can trigger us. Like, let's just say somebody was attacked by somebody named John or something. Even if they've never seen that person again, even if that person is locked away in jail, like, somebody could say the name John, and then all of a sudden, all of those emotions from that moment rise up, and now you're spazzing out at your coworker and they're calling you aggressive, like, what's wrong with you? And it's just because you heard the name John, or you smelled the scent of chocolate, or whatever is attached to that moment, to all of our senses, whether we recognize them directly or not. They can show up in our lives because our brains are constantly recording, and our subconscious is constantly filtering information, even when we aren't aware of what's going on around us.
Yeah. I mean, just teach the people. Just teach the people, let them know, 'cause these things are, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I done took notes like trauma attachments. Make sure you like, you know what I'm saying? Google, is this a thing? You know what I'm saying? Like, I no shame and no shade. I promise you that. Like, if I don't know and I hear it and I'm like, is that a thing? Like, because I'm as I'm evolving into the soul care field, you know, I come at this and I tell this, like, I come at this with an associate's degree. I have no clinical background, no study in psychology. This is all like just wisdom from God, my own journey. And then, you know, being a professional student and always studying and learning more about, you know, what this is. And just, you know, just embracing myself in this world, or, you know, immersing myself in the world of, you know, trauma informed care, and then also emotional healing, simply because of what God walked me through. And so, you know, we all hit these points where we're like, yeah, I didn't know this was going to be the struggle bus.
Mm-hmm.
This was going to be a challenge. I didn't know this was going to be a hurdle for me. And so for you, what has been the biggest challenge or hurdle or healing step in your healing journey? And you can talk about, if you choose, you know, what got you there, and then what you saw was like, this is going to be like, okay, I'm going to have to put some work in. I really want to overcome this.
Yes. And so before I answer that, I just want to make sure that I point out that just because my trauma looks different from your trauma doesn't minimize or dismiss the trauma that you've experienced.
Amen.
Because oftentimes we like to think that, oh, trauma is limited to a crazy accident or an abusive relationship or, you know, being molested or something of that extreme type nature. And so the people that haven't been through those instances are like, well, that doesn't apply to me because
Right.
I haven't been through anything as bad as that. And so I always want to make sure that I remind people that just because your trauma looks differently than mine doesn't mean you haven't been traumatized, because that's part of the human life experience. Like, we've all experienced some form of trauma. Maybe that was a divorce that your parents went through that was really brutal or hectic, or some type of loss or grief or separation period. But like, we've all had something that we've been through. So I want to make sure that I point that out.
Yes. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. And then as far as my biggest challenge, it literally was my mindset, which is why I'm so gung ho on helping people master their mindset and create the quality of life that they desire, because that's everyone's biggest challenge, to be honest. And I don't mean that to sound cliche, but our thoughts influence our words, and which influences our behaviors, which influences the environment and how we show up in the world around us and how we engage and interact with other people. It impacts everything. And we don't recognize how powerful our mind is. Like, they say all this talk of robots and computer generations and all of that stuff, but they will still never touch how powerful the brain is.
Right.
No matter all of the work they do in the tech world, it'll never compare to how powerful our brains and our minds are. And so my biggest challenge specifically was overcoming that feeling of not being good enough. And there are a lot of limiting beliefs that one could go through, like the fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of rejection, that fear of, you know, not being lovable or valuable. Everyone is different, and we all have like usually a chunk that are main core ones. But for me, the specific one that was the biggest was not being good enough. And I would say that my life was good prior to 2007. I was happy. I was doing things, but I didn't recognize until I went through this moment that everything that I thought was fine was really essentially just kind of suppressed. And I was able to mask it well. And then I had this big boiling point that forced me to really sit down and say, okay, how do we heal this? Really. And I know I keep alluding to this situation, so let me just share. In 2007, I found myself waking up in complete darkness. I had no clue where I was. I went to move and I couldn't move. I went to call out and I couldn't speak. I couldn't see anything except the moonlight shining through an unfamiliar window. And so in my brain, because I watch too many movies, I'm thinking like, I can't see it, can't speak, can't move. It's completely dark. Obviously, I'm in some psycho's basement and he's waiting to torch me. I'm tied up somewhere. And so I start panicking. And I end up panicking for so long and for so much that I exhausted myself out to where I passed out. And the next time I woke up, I thought I had experienced just like one of those lifelike nightmares.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't ever want to experience that again. It felt too real.
Yeah.
Like, Lord,
Okay.
please. But then I slowly realized I still didn't know where I was, still couldn't move, still couldn't speak, still couldn't see. The only thing that had changed was now the sunlight was shining through that window that I knew wasn't mine. But before I could start panicking all over again, I heard voices. And a blonde lady walks up to me and she starts asking me questions. And I'm looking at her like she's crazy. And I'm thinking that I'm answering her. But in reality, it was just like
Oh, wow.
noises like that coming out of my mouth because there was a tube going down my throat. And that tube was keeping me alive. Turns out I was actually in the hospital. So I was not kidnapped. Still didn't know where I was, but at least I was safe in a
Right.
hospital.
That part.
He proceeds to tell me that on May 13, 2007, the car I was driving went off the opposite side of the highway, flipped multiple times before landing upside down.
Wow.
My head was pinned between the ground and the entire weight of the car on top of me. I had to be cut from the car, and I was immediately pronounced brain dead on the scene.
Wow.
But God, because
Right?
despite that, rather than putting me in plastic, they put me on a helicopter and they lifeline me to a trauma hospital where, again, by a new set of medical professionals, mind you, I was pronounced brain dead upon arrival.
Wow.
But God,
Right.
because despite that, yet again, they proceeded to do emergency surgeries. And they only placed me on life support until my family could be contacted. But they didn't even expect my body to make it through the night.
Wow.
But God.
Okay. Okay. Come on, somebody with the butt God.
Man,
Why do you
listen,
do it?
when I reflect on all the moments that could have, um, nobody but God. So
Right.
essentially, one minute I'm minding my business, driving home from visiting my mother on Mother's Day, and the next I'm waking up to being told that not only had I been brain dead for the past week, but amongst a long list of injuries, I was also paralyzed.
Wow.
Brain dead and paralyzed. Talk about a flip on my life. And see, this is the moment. This is that pivotal moment because most people would crack right there. They would
Mhm.
hear everything that's coming in. They would see what happened and what's around them. And they would just play victim and say, okay, this is my life now. And throw themselves the largest pity party. For me, one, I was grateful to be alive. Two, I was grateful that I wasn't kidnapped.
Right.
And then my mind shifted to this is not how I want to live.
Yeah.
So, how do I create the life that I desire to live, despite what it looks like right now, despite what doctors are telling me, despite what science and medicine says? Like, how do I create the life that I want to live? And the first part of that was being faithful because I believed that God had kept me here for a reason, and part of that reason included a full recovery. The doctors didn't know that, and their outlook was, we don't know if you'll be able to walk again. We don't think you'll be able to go back to school, but they also pronounced me dead 2 times.
Right.
So
Right.
in my head, technically you've been wrong, not once, but twice at least. And
Right.
I thank you for your expertise and for everything you've done for me as far as the surgeries and all that stuff. But I believe that there was more to why I was here. And I held on to that faith, and I held on to the vision of what I wanted my life to be like, which didn't include me in a wheelchair, which didn't include me relying on other people to live. And so I had to shift my mindset. And I know we kind of went in a different direction of what I was saying about not feeling good enough, but it all ties back into
It does,
because
yeah.
of my recovery process. People were calling me Miracle Woman, Walking Miracle, the front page news, because there were 3 articles that were written. And the very first one was front page news, big bold headlines, Miracle on the Highway. Woman believed dead is now alive in Indianapolis hospital. So I had this new title that I didn't request. I didn't give myself, and I didn't feel good enough to be that person.
Right.
All of those feelings of not feeling good enough just boiled over, because what I didn't know is that it started in my childhood, like most of our beliefs do, as a
Mhm.
result of having an absent father. Yes, I knew who he was. Yes, he was here, there, every now and then. And I had an amazing mother that gave me everything I needed and was very loving and very caring and very supportive. But there was still that inner piece of, why doesn't my dad want me? So that started that feeling of not being good enough, that, well, if I do great in school, then I must be good enough to be his daughter. If all of these people like me, people pleasing, then I must be good enough to be his daughter. If I excel in this, and this, overachieving, then I must be good enough to be his daughter. And so I wasn't telling myself that as a child, but that's how it showed up in my behaviors, and it showed up in my adult life. And as I grew, just at different levels. And it wasn't until I was hit with this trauma experience that it boiled over, because once again, things that I had thought I healed, as far as my relationship with my dad and a previous abusive relationship and things like that, hit a hit, because now here's this big title. I don't feel good enough. And so I started to lack self-care, because I was busy trying to live up to that title, that expectation of other people, instead of who I wanted to be and instead of who God called me to be. So that was the biggest challenge. And I still struggle with that, because it's an ongoing journey. But because I'm aware of my mindset and I'm intentional, I am able to catch it a lot faster and course correct and say, oh, no, I know that feeling. I know what's happening. I know what it results to. Let me practice self-discipline, because I'm aware, and make sure that I'm doing the opposite of what that limiting belief would cause me to do. Not to hurt me, but it's trying to protect me.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, like, I thank it for trying to protect me, but not in a way that's productive.
Right. That part. Listen.
Wrong answer.
No, it was a good answer, because there's so much to pull from it, and being very practical about what actually happened and what you did as a result of hearing the news, discovering where you were, making a decision. And so one of the things that I was, look, child, okay, taking notes, taking notes. All right, listen, I may be doing the podcast, but I'm learning at the same time, right? And so one of the things I think that was so critical that you pointed out was, sometimes we don't know that we're operating with this mask on of who we think we're supposed to be. We're showing up in ways that are performance based. And so, like you said, with the people pleasing and the overachieving, right? We're doing all these things to be loved, to be accepted, to be validated. And so we often wear this mask, where we go out and we present to the world who we think the world would like. But we're not really happy with that person. But it's what the world says is good, right? It's the title that they gave us. It's I would have friends that say, you're an amazing mom. And I felt like crap on the inside as a mom. It was like, how do I live up to this, what they think they see? And it was like, I may have just been celebrating a moment, but you have now these collective moments where you've now assumed that I'm this great mom. And I'm like struggling, right? I got more kids than there is me. I felt like I was pregnant all my 20s. and I'm popping out all these babies. And now I have to take care of all these babies. And they're all different. And none of them came with a manual, which is stupid. Like none of them came with a manual.
Ghetto.
Right. Like who signed up for this? God. And so, we present out to the world who we think that they're going to like, who we think that they're going to accept, who we think that they're going to love. And we try to perform to be accepted and to be validated and to be, affirmed in who we are, except the world is affirming somebody that's not really real.
Mm-hmm.
It's a facade of us that we're putting out, and we don't realize it until we come like smack up against something that says, holy crap, I'm none of those things. And the pandemic did that for a lot of people. The pandemic unveiled a lot of people's true identity, the things that they are struggling with, and the things they know now that they need to heal from, which is why I think there was this insurgence of coaches. Exactly.
Magnifying glass on.
They sure did. Listen, the pandemic was surely like, what's that? Did you see that?
The high definition. Like you could see the pores on everyone. You could see the pore on the pore.
Right. Oh my God. And so people had to really come to grips with who they are and how they show up in the world. And really came to a head where they were like, they had to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you have people, I call them negative narratives, and they are the negative things that people speak over you, intentionally or not. Mm-hmm. The intent may not to be negative, right? But because they can't see any other outcome or any other way to be, because they're so limited, right? Because of their limited beliefs, they'll project onto you what you can't do, what you won't be able to do, what your outcome is. Well, if you go this way, I've had coaches tell me I can only charge a certain amount of money for my program because of the industry that I'm in. Mm-hmm. I've had people tell me that I'll never be a good mom. I've had families say I'll never amount to anything. I've wasted my life when I had my son at 19. I've heard all the things, right? And so, in the story that you're sharing about, what happened to you, and the doctors, they're making pronouncements over your life. They're making diagnosis over your life. They're predicting outcomes for the duration and the future of your life. But you decided. That's the beauty of it. Like, you decide what this is going to look like going forward. You said, I'm not going to be in a wheelchair. I'm not going to live the rest of my life looking like this. I'm not going to live the rest of my life feeling like this. I'm not going to live the rest of my life moving in a way that keeps me mentally paralyzed and physically paralyzed. I'm not doing that. Like, that's not God. That's not what we talked about. Like, so help me make it make sense, because they're not getting it. And here's the thing that's dope. It's kind of like the unspoken. It's like, you can go ahead and think that. I understand and I respect your position. I got it. You have to tell me these things because your training has only taught you to see things a certain way. Mm-hmm. And they typically don't tell you to mix your training with faith. Right. I get it. No shade. But here's the thing. What you're saying is not really going to be me.
Right. I'm the anomaly.
Shout out to the 16 years that I've proven you wrong. Amen, somebody. You see what I'm saying? That part.
And I want to make sure that I point out, because you mentioned about it being a choice, and it truly is an internal choice. Nobody else can make it for you. Like when people say, oh, you made me so angry, or you made me so happy. It's like, no, actually, no one can make you those things. You make yourself those things. You decide what it is. Like, I remember one time I could see an argument brewing, but I had already made a decision that morning that I was going to have a great day. And so when that moment arrives, like, I was laughing, not to be disrespectful or anything, but like, you can participate in that argument by yourself. I'm choosing not to join you because I'm going to have a great day. And in my situation, God did what he could do in the spiritual sense, as far as those but God moments when they could have covered me up and said, put a fork in her, she's done. They gave me the diagnosis, but they proceeded as if I wasn't. Why? So God did what he could do in the spiritual sense. My medical team did what they could do in the scientific sense, as far as the surgeries and, all the life support and all of those things. And then the baton was passed to me.
Right.
God did his part. My medics did their part. There's nobody else. My family and friends did their part as far as being supportive and praying whenever I couldn't. The choice was mine. Like once I woke up, the choice became mine to determine how is the rest of this going to play out? How does the book end? And I had to make the intentional choice to say, this is what I want.
Right. Right. And that's what it comes down to. That's absolutely what it comes down to. We get to decide 100% of the time how our life is going to look. 100% of the time, you always have the power, the control, the autonomy, and the ability to decide which way your life is going to go, which way you're going to move. You get to decide that. You get to decide if you're going to engage in the argument. You get to decide what you're going to the wall for. Like, if this is something that is hitting a core value, I promise you, I'll go to the wall for it. But if it's not, then you just going to have to be upset. And that was one of the mom lessons that I had to learn. It was very hard for me to tell my kids no, because that was my trigger, being a good mom, right? And so when I learned to start telling them no, I would cry, I would sob. It would just tear me apart. And he's 18 now, but he had you talk about Puss in Boots game on lock. Ooh, he could make that. And I'd be like, it was like I don't know, it's a skill. He should put that on a resume. He can make that tear well up like all the way to the lid, honey, just glossy. And I would be like, here's a snack. And then I had to get to a point because I realized the more I say yes, they're never going to be equipped to hear no. They got to learn it from me. This is where they're going to learn it first. And so making the decision to say no and then having to stand on it. And so now, as they're older, I'm like, it's a no for me, and I can get that. My daughter, she's now, like I said, she's 13 and she gave me the whole teenage attitude. And like her stomach was bothering her this morning. And I said, Anaya, it's better to go to school and then come home sick than to just continue to play sick. And, you can actually muster through the day. The lesson is that when she gets to work, it's better to go into work and then, leave sick than to not feel good for like a temporary amount of time, knowing that you probably could have gotten through the day. And so it's not a dig against, her not honoring herself or her not practicing self-care. It's really her figuring out, can I actually make it through the day? I want her critical thinking skills to really process. So the fact that if she was really sick, if it was really bothering her, I would have known.
Right.
I would have known, it would have been like, she's not herself. It's clear. But she got up, honey, she put on her little mascara. Oh, if you can do that. And I didn't say it to her, but I was like, if you're going to do all of that, because if you're really not feeling well, like and she's one of those, like, she has to, the outfit's got to be this and that, and edges got to be laid and slick. And so if she's doing all of the laying and the slicking, if the outfit is coming down, looking on point, and you have enough to flip and curl them little lashes, baby, I promise you, I'd rather come pick you up from school knowing that you gave it your best effort than for you to stay home and be sitting in here, bouncing around, wanting me to cook you all kinds of things when you say your stomach hurts. Like, no,
right.
But you do but the point is that you get to decide. You get to decide. I want her to build her, like, can I do this today? And if it's a no, it's a no. Then you stay home. You get a self-care day. Like, we have those. My 18-year-old, real quick, Mom, I need a mental day. I need to reset. Okay. I get it. I get it. They get two per quarter. They get two per quarter. Like, you don't got to explain it, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to process through it. Do you have any tests today? Is there anything important that you really need to take care of? Is this going to impact your grade? Do you have practice after school? Because you can't be homesick and then go to practice. That's not how
Right.
that works.
Right.
Okay. You also not on the phone, right? Because you're sick. So,
Right.
but it's processing through, the decisions of things that we have to make. And so it like broke me to actually say no to them, but I'm not going to battle for you. My
Mm-hmm.
answer is no. That's what it comes back down to. What are you willing to go to the wall for?
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't willing to go to the wall for it. So it wasn't really impacting her at a core level. She just wanted to stay home because she just didn't feel like going to school.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I'll know she'll text me real quick, like, Mom, I'm at the nurse. I cannot. I knew then. Okay. You made it through what you could make it through. And now we're gonna call it. And that's it. But you do get to decide 100% of all the decisions and the trajectory of your life and the way that you want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you've dropped already so much. And I wanted to pull out as much as I could. But if you could, what is one concept that you would want women to lean into as part of their healing from any past emotional trauma? And it may be present trauma that they're still, maybe subconsciously dealing with it, not recognizing that they are. What is one concept? And maybe it's a tip or a tool or a technique, maybe a process,
Mm-hmm.
advice that you would have for any woman who's ready to sort of lean into the healing process, who knows that there's more for her on the other side, who doesn't really quite know how to make the decision or how to set her mind on, this is how I want my life to live. I know they said this over me, but I want to say this over me instead. I want to speak over my own life. I want to decide how I want to live. I want to decide where my life goes. I want to decide what my life looks like. What is one thing that you could share with her, as like the next one thing that she could possibly do?
So definitely therapy. I recommend therapy for everyone, even if you're not in a space of, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my mind. No, therapy can be preventative just as much as healing all of those things, because life is going to life, and we never know when life is going to hit us until it does. And so being better equipped, you don't have to go every week or every other week, but even once a month or once a quarter, or, just having those check-in sessions to make sure that you're maintaining. So therapy is definitely one, but then also understanding and knowing that it starts in our minds. Like, we have to be mindful of what we're thinking, what we're telling ourselves. Every now and then I'll say, if your friends talk to you the way that you talk to you, would you still be friends with them? And unless all of your self-talk is positive, I would hope the answer is no. Science and research has shown that most of our inner dialogue is negative and most of it is repetitive. And here's the thing about the brain. The brain doesn't know true from false. It doesn't know real from fake, fiction from nonfiction until we tell it. It doesn't know that something is scary until we tell it it's scary. So the more that we are saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, guess what? Your brain is going to work to pull out all the evidence of why you can't do this. Because where your focus goes, your energy flows, and you attract more of that you're focused on. So we have to be mindful of, what are we telling ourselves? And, sometimes we hear it from other people, you can't do this or you can't do that. And we take on those things, but despite what they say, what are you telling yourself? Despite what it looks like in the right now, what are you telling yourself? It's just like when we watch a scary movie, how we have to say, it's not real, it's just a movie, it's just a movie, it's fake. It's the same way in life. Whatever you are repeating in your brain is going to believe because you said so. So
Right.
we have to be mindful. What am I telling myself? And a way to start to capture your thoughts in a practical sense is to keep a thought log. It is very tedious. I'm going to admit that up front. It is very tedious, but doing the work now will help you miles in the long run. So every time you have a thought, writing it down. One of those negative thoughts, write it down. Try to write down the date, the time, what was happening around you when you experienced that thought. And sometimes what you'll notice, like do this for at least a week. Every time you have a negative thought, keep a little journal, a little notepad with you, write it down, write down all the details. And what you might find is that there's a pattern. Like maybe you only feel like this in the morning or in the afternoons or around certain people or in certain situations, because then you can start to identify when those moments are going to happen or when they're happening and start to course correct a lot quicker. So being mindful of what are you telling yourself?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. It reminds me of the book Crucial Conversation. And what they describe is they put it in boxes. So what happens is in box one, there's an event. And then in box two, you experience some emotion related to the event. But then in box four, um, I think it's like you address it. And then box five, like there's the resolution. But in box three is the story that you tell yourself related to what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody can say, I can't do lunch today. You feel box two, right? Box one, I can't do lunch. Box two, you feel rejected. Box three, you tell yourself that you're not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You told yourself that.
Mm-hmm.
The person never told you you weren't good enough. The person didn't reject you, but you told yourself that I'm not good enough because you felt rejected in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
because rejection is probably one of the wounds that you deal with. And so the person who just, for whatever reason, like probably a legit reason, could not meet that at that particular day and time, but you told yourself a story. And so you are in 100% control of the thoughts that you tell yourself. And here's the thing, little bonus. Even when you don't say it out loud, it's still a thought. Like they are your silent words. Your thoughts are just your silent words. You just didn't say it out loud, right? Just because you didn't say it out loud doesn't mean that it won't take root and it won't manifest and it won't change. And I remember when I had started to do that thought journal, and I showed my physician, and I said, I'm just making a mental note of all the negative thoughts that come with me throughout the day. And so she tried to convince me not to do that and to do a positive thought journal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so bothered by the fact that she told me not to write down my negative thoughts. She's like, it's really good to not focus on the negative. And I'm like, yeah, but how will I learn? You know what I'm saying? Like I need the math to math. I need some data. You know what I'm saying? That's how we
Right.
is through the data, right? And so, like you said, soul care and self-care go hand in hand. And so, I like this description where it's like soul care is the sort of the surgery that's needed so they can get in there, get to the root, really see what's going on and determine what the treatment plan is going to be. But they got to clean out the infection. They got to, clean it and repair it and then heal it and seal it. Right. And then self-care comes in as sort of the preventative measures or the proactive measures that you take to make sure you don't re-injure that particular part of yourself or sustain a worse injury because you were neglecting this particular part of your being, of your soul, of your spirit, of your emotions, of your mental health, of your physical health, of your spiritual foundation. And so it's hard to heal and seal something that we don't reveal.
Right.
Is essentially it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, listen, I promise you this conversation has been rich. I almost want to do a part 2. Okay, just check your email, sis. That's all I'm going to say. Because this is good. And this is not going to be the last time that you hear from Lindsey. She is going to join us for the Soul Care Success Series. Child, she's going to get to teach and preach. Y'all want to get your notes. Okay. This was just a little preview. You want to get your notes because it's gonna be good. I'm gonna have my notes. I don't know about y'all. Okay. I'm just gonna I'm gonna have my notes, right? I'm gonna decide to have my notes. But this conversation has absolutely been a blessing, and I just can't imagine that no one is going to take nothing away from this. There were so many tips, so many tools, so many techniques, so many processes, and just things that people can do to actually go through their soul care journey. Like, listen, I can't even like give it enough because it was so good. And so I thank you so much for coming on and gracing the podcast, with your expertise and, showing people what it really means to decide to live a first class life.
Mhm.
And so, I want to leave you with any parting words for our listeners. I'm going to put your contact information up here so the peoples can follow you. All right. You want to make sure you head over to Instagram at Lindsey Vertner or go to her website, www.liveafirstclasslife.com, to find out more about her products and services that she is offering. And if you are in a space where you are ready to get your mind set on living a first class life, you definitely want to follow, you want to connect, you want to reach out, and you want to engage and see how you can connect with Lindsey to really support the next level for you, right? So, Lindsey, any last parting words for our listeners out there?
Yes. Well, first, let me point out, look, so ghetto. I just noticed my heater in the background corner. Like, look, I keep it real, okay?
Okay, listen, shoot, it's cold. When it's cold, it's cold. Shoot.
Look, usually I'll move it out the frame, and I was like, that's been there the whole time. I've been in this conversation good. We're all alike. We're all alike. But no, so we were talking about focus. So I just want to, have this ending demonstration on everyone's mind. So if you take your left hand and put it out to the side of you, just like this, and then take your right hand and put it on the other side. And then if you turn your head fully and look at your left hand, can you see your right hand behind you?
No.
Exactly, because we can't focus on two things at the same time. We can't focus on the left, the right, the top, the bottom, the in, the out, the positive, the negative, the solution, the problem. So again, whatever we're focused on, that's where our energy flows, and we attract more of that same thing. So if you're constantly saying, I'm broke, I don't got enough money, I'm always in debt, you're attracting more lack and poverty into your life, because that's where all of your energy is flowing. That's what your brain is believing, because that's what you're telling yourself. So your brain is pulling all the evidence, which subconsciously impacts how you show up in the world, which will push opportunities away or attract them to you, depending on what you're focused on. You might have the solution to what you need, but because you're looking to the left, it's over here on the right. You got to make the change and switch what you're focused on. So just remember, where your focus goes, your energy flows, and it's progress over perfection. It's not going to happen overnight, especially if you've been dealing with something for years. But as long as you're taking those small daily steps, the next thing you know, it's like, that's the moment that shows up down the line. So progress over perfection. Know that you are more powerful than the blocks in your life, because I'm of the firm belief that you can overcome anything. If I literally can come back from death's bed, then there's no excuse to you not creating your first class life. And so I do have a gift for everyone that's tuned in.
Yay.
If you go to takeactiondownload.com, because I want to help you take action, you can download a free action plan guide. That's takeactiondownload.com. And again, reach out to me on all the platforms. Share this out. Share your insights. Make sure you tag myself and Ayana. We want to hear your aha moments, okay?
Yes.
Thank you for trusting me to serve your community in the warrior womanhood.
You are so welcome. Listen, this has been good, y'all. Good. So I just want to remind you quickly that we are having the Soul Care Success Series, and you should absolutely register for it, because it's more of these types of conversations. And I promise you, they will bless your life. Okay. Bless your life and change and transform. So you definitely want to head over to bit.ly/soul-care-success, all the dashes, to make sure that you register it. So that way you can get access to the replay. And so this has been another episode of the Warrior Woman Podcast. Yes. And Lindsey, I thank you so much for joining us and